4 separate times in 2026, Microsoft shipped a Windows 11 update, and 4 separate times, that update broke something it wasn't supposed to touch. Boot failures, blue screens, shutdown bugs, files vanishing under the wrong names. This isn't a rumor, and it isn't a single bad patch. It's a pattern confirmed by Microsoft itself, and it's still not fully fixed. The first hit came in January, and it turned out to be 2 separate bugs riding inside the same update. Microsoft's regular January 13th Patch Tuesday rollup, tracked as KB507455 for Windows 11 version 23H2, was a standard cumulative security release. Within days, 2 distinct high-impact regressions surfaced. The first hit machines, with a virtualization-based security feature called System Guard Secure Launch enabled, common on enterprise and IoT device images. On those systems, selecting shut down or trying to hibernate would instead trigger a restart. The machine simply couldn't reach a proper powered off or hibernated state. It would cycle back on instead. Microsoft's own advisory described the likely cause as an interaction between the update's servicing process and early boot security features, which altered how the shutdown sequence was being interpreted. Until a permanent fix shipped, Microsoft's documented workaround for affected users was to force a shutdown manually from the command line. There was no equivalent workaround for hibernation, so affected users were told simply to save their work and avoid relying on it. The second bug was broader and arguably more disruptive for businesses: credential prompt failures during remote desktop connections, which broke sign-ins through the Windows app, Azure Virtual Desktop, and Windows 365 Cloud PC sessions. Unlike the shutdown bug, which was narrowly scoped to enterprise and IoT editions of 23H2, this authentication failure reached much further, hitting Windows 11 25H2, Windows 10 22H2 under extended security updates, and multiple Windows Server editions, including Server 2025, meaning IT administrators managing remote workforces were suddenly locked out of the exact tools they'd used to fix machines remotely. Microsoft moved fast. On January 17th, just 4 days after the original rollout, it shipped 2 emergency out-of-band updates, KB57744 and KB57797, distributed manually through the Microsoft Update catalog, rather than through the normal Windows Update channel, specifically to stop the bleeding on both bugs at once. A third out-of-band package followed on January 24th, rolling the earlier fixes together and adding further quality corrections for lingering application freezes tied to file save and open operations. Separately, and never fully folded into an official fix at the time, Microsoft also acknowledged a related Outlook Classic bug tied to the same January cumulative update. For users on POP email accounts specifically, Outlook Classic would silently fail to reopen after being closed because a leftover background process was blocking it, with the only workaround being to manually kill the Outlook process in Task Manager each time before relaunching it. The frustration among IT professionals watching this unfold in real time was documented too, not just inferred. In the comments beneath one tech outlet's coverage of the emergency fixes, one reader summed up a sentiment echoed widely across enterprise forums that month, arguing that Microsoft should face real accountability and even financial penalties for a pattern of breaking basic functionality on nearly every Patch Tuesday cycle. Whether or not that's a fair remedy, the sentiment reflects something real. For IT departments, a single mandatory monthly update introducing 2 separate regressions, one of which blocks the exact remote access tools used to fix problems on managed devices, isn't an abstract inconvenience. It's a direct hit to operational continuity, which is precisely why Microsoft treated it as urgent enough to break its own release cadence twice within 2 weeks. Then came May. That month's Patch Tuesday update introduced a new failure mode entirely. It wouldn't install at all on certain PCs, throwing error code 08800F9.2 partway through the reboot process, typically around 35% into installation. Microsoft eventually traced the cause to something almost nobody outside IT departments has ever heard of: the EFI system partition, a small hidden section of a hard drive that Windows uses during startup. On machines where that partition had shrunk to 10 megabytes of free space or less, often because of earlier manufacturer-issued BIOS updates quietly eating into it, the May update simply couldn't complete, and the system would roll itself back with a generic "something didn't go as planned" message. Microsoft eventually shipped a fix that addressed the underlying cause so it would stop happening on future updates. June was worse, and it's the incident most people who follow Windows news actually remember. The June 9th update, officially called KB5094 or 126, mattered because it patched roughly 200 security vulnerabilities, including several critical flaws and at least one zero-day exploit already being used in the wild, the kind of update you genuinely can't afford to skip. But it also introduced boot failures, blue screens, and BitLocker recovery loops on certain devices, particularly a wave of HP business PCs that would reboot straight into recovery mode instead of the desktop. Microsoft officially confirmed 2 separate bugs tied to this update. One where the recycle bin displayed files under their raw internal system names instead of the names users actually gave them, creating a real risk that someone could permanently delete the wrong file without realizing it, and a second bug where Microsoft Word's background integration with third-party software broke inside specialized workflows, hitting medical and accounting software in particular, where documents get generated automatically behind the scenes. Independent reports also documented additional black screen of death crashes and BitLocker recovery prompts that Microsoft had not yet officially acknowledged at the time. A fix for the recycle bin bug wasn't expected until July 14th, more than a month after the update that caused it went out. By July, the pattern extended to Microsoft's own delivery process. Rather than waiting for another wave of complaints, Microsoft preemptively blocked that month's Patch Tuesday update, KB51650, on a specific set of Dell PCs before it could even install. The reason was a driver conflict. A preview update in late June had exposed an incompatibility between an Intel driver called the Innovation Platform Framework Processor Participant and a new Windows feature for managing USB-C connections. Left unresolved, the conflict could cause poor performance, unexpected shutdowns, increased heat, and battery drain. Dell later confirmed just how far this reached. The affected driver wasn't some obscure component. It was used across the company's lineup for power and thermal management, for reducing overheating on gaming laptops, and even for presence detection features like wake on approach and walk away lock on business machines. By the time Dell finished mapping the damage, the compatibility bug touched more than 245 separate PC models. Microsoft resolved it with an out-of-band update on July 18th. 4 incidents, 4 different root causes, a shutdown bug tied to a security feature, an installation failure tied to disk partition space, a cluster of boot and file handling bugs tied to a major security patch, and a driver incompatibility that rippled across an entire manufacturer's product line. None of them hit millions of PCs worldwide indiscriminately, the way some viral headlines have framed it. Each one hit a specific, definable slice of the Windows 11 install base. Particular editions, particular hardware configurations, particular manufacturers. That's a meaningfully different story than a single catastrophic global outage, but it's arguably a more damning one because it shows the same failure pattern recurring in different forms, month after month, across an entire year. Microsoft has actually said as much in public, which is unusual for a company of its size. At the Windows Hardware Engineering Conference in Taipei in May, Microsoft didn't just announce another patch. It announced a structural response to the whole pattern called the Driver Quality Initiative. The premise behind it is a direct admission. The Windows Update Driver Catalog is a massive, centralized repository holding tens of thousands of driver families submitted by hardware manufacturers and independent vendors. And for years, low-quality or outdated drivers slipping through that catalog have been a major recurring cause of Windows 11 PCs breaking after updates, including, based on the incidents above, well into 2026 itself. Microsoft's stated fix is to bring engineers from major hardware partners, including Dell, AMD, HP, and Asus, into direct joint accountability with its own Windows development team, holding manufacturer-submitted code to a stricter bar before it's allowed to reach the update pipeline that feeds billions of PCs. The initiative sits alongside a separate related effort to lock down parts of the Windows kernel and clean up long-standing performance issues in the operating system's interface. The Driver Quality Initiative itself rests on 4 specific pillars, according to Microsoft's own published breakdown of the plan, pushing more third-party drivers out of kernel mode entirely and into safer, sandboxed user mode drivers or Microsoft's own built-in class drivers where possible, verifying hardware partners more rigorously before their code is allowed into the update pipeline, including more automated compatibility checks and stricter requirements under the Windows Hardware Compatibility Program, and a cleanup of the Windows Update Driver catalog itself, actively removing outdated or low-quality drivers that have been sitting in the system for years, using better diagnostic data to investigate problems as they're reported rather than after they've already spread. That driver-level work is only one piece of a larger quality push Microsoft has been rolling out across 2026, and it's worth understanding the rest of it because it directly targets the kind of instability behind several of the incidents above. At its Build Developer Conference in June, Microsoft confirmed it is rewriting core parts of the Windows 11 shell in native code, moving away from years of building interface elements as essentially web pages wrapped in a desktop window. Components that Microsoft's own engineering leadership has acknowledged behave less like true parts of the operating system, and more like remote web content given administrator privileges and a nicer icon. Internally, this effort reportedly runs under the codename Project K2, organized around 3 stated priorities: performance, craft, and reliability. The most visible piece of it is a full rewrite of the Windows 11 Start menu using Microsoft's native WinUI framework, moving it off web-based components entirely and onto a new system compositor designed to cut down on the interaction delay users have long complained about. That small but persistent hesitation before a menu actually opens. Microsoft has been explicit that this isn't a temporary framework either. The company dropped the 3 from the WinUI 3 branding specifically to signal to developers, many of whom are understandably wary after 2 decades of Microsoft introducing and then abandoning UI frameworks like WPF, Silverlight, and UWP, that this one is meant to be permanent. Beyond the shell rewrite, Microsoft's broader 2026 quality commitments, previewed in a March progress report and expanded through the year, include giving users back the ability to shut down or restart a PC without being forced to install pending updates first. More flexible options to pause updates for longer stretches with fewer automatic restarts and nagging notifications, the ability to skip non-critical updates during initial device setup to reach the desktop faster out of the box, memory optimization work aimed specifically at lower-end 8GB machines, and a full rewrite of File Explorer aimed at faster launch times and smoother navigation. Broad rollout of this quality push across the full Windows 11 install base is scheduled for fall 2026. It's worth putting 2026 in context against Windows' own history, because a rough year for update quality is not, in itself, a new phenomenon for this operating system. Windows 11's predecessor went through stretches that were arguably worse. Windows 10's October 2018 feature update stands as one of the most infamous updates Microsoft has ever shipped. It deleted user files on affected machines, broke built-in apps including Mail, Edge, Calendar, and News, caused boot loops and failed installations, and triggered widespread blue screens due to an incompatibility with certain Intel audio drivers. That update was serious enough that Microsoft paused its rollout to everyone, and it took Microsoft, along with its network of Windows Insider testers, until March of the following year to resolve most of the damage before the update could be safely reissued at scale. Judged against that bar, none of 2026's 4 Windows 11 incidents involved permanent data loss, and each was scoped to specific configurations rather than pulled entirely from public release. There's also a broader, harder trend sitting underneath all of this, and it helps explain why update reliability has become such a persistent headache regardless of which version of Windows is involved. The sheer number of security issues Microsoft has to patch every year has grown dramatically. According to data compiled from the Microsoft Security Response Center, the operating system recorded 11,191 security vulnerabilities across all of 2025, an 845% increase compared with the year before. Every one of those vulnerabilities represents a potential fix that has to be written, tested, and pushed out on a monthly cadence to hundreds of millions of machines running wildly different combinations of hardware, drivers, and third-party software. Which is precisely the kind of complexity that makes a clean, side effect-free patch increasingly difficult to guarantee. Windows 10 hasn't been immune either, even in its final support years. One January 2026 security update for Windows 10 under Extended Security Updates KB50755912 was independently reported to cause a frozen task manager, startup and shutdown loops, start menu glitches, and failures in third-party desktop applications like Brave and the Epic Games Launcher. A near-identical failure signature to what hit Windows 11 the very same month. None of this excuses the pattern. It does explain it. Both of Microsoft's currently supported desktop operating systems are being patched against a security vulnerability workload that's grown by roughly a factor of 9 in a single year, on top of an already staggering diversity of PC hardware configurations that Windows has to remain compatible with. And that combination is producing exactly the kind of recurring, narrowly scoped update failures documented throughout 2026. For anyone trying to avoid becoming the next data point in that pattern, Windows actually ships a built-in diagnostic tool that's worth knowing about, Reliability Monitor, accessible by searching View Reliability History from the Start menu, or by running rail directly. It tracks application crashes, failed updates, hardware problems, and unexpected shutdowns going back up to a year, and assigns each day a stability score from 1 to 10. Making it possible to see at a glance exactly which day, and often which specific update, coincided with the system becoming less stable. For anyone managing multiple machines, or simply wary of being first in line for a bad patch, the practical lesson from this whole year is straightforward. Mandatory security updates generally shouldn't be skipped, given how many of them close real, actively exploited vulnerabilities, but delaying non-critical or optional updates for a week or two, checking Microsoft's official release health notes for a given KB number before installing, and keeping half an eye on outlets that track known issues in real time remain the most reliable ways to avoid being an early casualty the next time a rollout goes wrong. What's already provable right now is that Windows 11 has had a genuinely rough year on the reliability front. At minimum 4 confirmed, officially acknowledged update failures in 7 months, several of them consisting of 2 or more distinct bugs shipped inside the same rollup. At least one involving a critical zero-day patch that users couldn't safely skip despite the side effects, and one bug that reached across nearly 250 PC models from a single manufacturer before it was caught. That's the real story. No panic, no single global meltdown, no shadowy figure from Microsoft's past pulling strings behind the scenes. Just an operating system used by well over 1 billion devices worldwide, shipping mandatory security updates on a monthly cycle, publicly admitting the pattern, and now in the middle of a genuinely large-scale multi-front effort to fix the plumbing behind it before the next Patch Tuesday finds a new way to break something else.